Good to see everybody. It's really nice to kind of get in person here. We'll see how this goes, and my guess is it's just going to be us in the room. It seems to be the case. I'm expecting a rush of people at the door, but still nice to kind of have a meeting where we can, see each other's faces and get some good stuff taken care of tonight. So, are there any participants on there other than the PEG producer? Just as far as public comment, I don't see any, right? I would see them here, I assume.
You would see someone raise their hand when you call for public comment.
Okay, I'll call for public comment. I just don't see anybody who might raise, but. Okay. So I think our general goal tonight is to, turn our attention back to the budget book. Hopefully, if we're lucky, we can go through and finish the remaining line items that we haven't kind of concluded on. I know we're not totally done, but at least it will be our first pass. I think we have some things we want to follow up. We didn't mark everything green. Then I think I was hoping that we could then talk about the debt service schedule that Patrick just gave us today and kind of walk through what's in the budget and then turn our attention to the details behind debt service. But before we dive in, I was wondering if we can maybe talk a little about just remaining schedule. And Amy, I'm going to turn to you for a little help with this, but just with the number of days left between now and whatever the meeting date is that we have to have the, I guess the letter written.
Yep.
You probably have the schedule there, Amy, right? I've got it, but
Pulling it up right now.
what's not totally clear to me is when we have to have the letter done, if it's truly right before the printing and mailing, or if it's before things get sent over to, like on the 17th, where it says Finance Committee finishes report.
So ideally, you would finish your report by the 17th, and that's the assumption that the select board closes the warrant on the 19th. You do have, because you don't have to vote the letter, you have up until the select board closes the warrant for it to get in there.
That's kind of what I thought, okay.
But yeah, the 19th is still the target for the select board to close.
So preferable by the 19th or the 17th?
Preferably by the 17th.
Okay.
Just so that there isn't a team of us at town hall until midnight trying to put it together. Because we have to, the printer has to have it in the morning when they walk in on the 20th for us to meet the deadline to mail them on time.
Okay.
The 17th is the Boston Marathon, just so you know.
Okay. I'm not running, so I'm not worried about it. Okay, so we'll shoot for the 17th is I think what I'm hearing. That's preferable. But it's not really the deadline for it to be printed in the warrant, right? We do have more time if it dragged a little bit.
You have up until they close it on the 19th to get it printed in.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so
Does it matter if that's Patriots Day?
Yeah.
Is it a holiday for
So I think it's a Boston
that
holiday,
Monday?
Yeah.
for
It's
sure.
Patriots Day.
The 19th is?
No, the
Oh,
The
17th.
17th.
Oh, that doesn't matter. That was just
Okay.
a date.
You're open. You are open, town hall is open.
Town hall's not. I'm always open during budget season.
all right,
Well, it's kind of a holiday.
Naomi, did we confirm Naomi said she's waiting in the lobby there? Hi, Naomi, can you just let us know that you can hear us and maybe say something so we're sure that you can speak when you want to?
Yes, I'm here. I'm in transit, but I can hear you. Thanks.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so I think we left off at DPW last time we met. If we could, maybe Amy, if you could, or whoever's presenting, we can share the spreadsheet and pick up there.
Yeah, I do have notes from the DPW director on the shade trees that were in question last time.
What that was in question last time?
The shade trees.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So he said for FY22 capital, he had gotten the 40,000 for shade trees where they had a contractor come in to plant some. But the $10,000 a year is based off their purchasing of trees and having our DPW employees be the ones to plant them. So they do 25 in the spring and 25 in the fall. They've been able to hit that target every year, but they can't, he said with the manpower they have, can't do more than the 50 trees annually.
So $10,000 equates to 50 trees, is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But he did say for FY '25, he will be doing another capital request for another potential 40, and that if FinCom or any other advisory or governing board wanted to increase that capital plan, they could go out to bid to have a contractor install, plant more trees.
So for this year, this is the best you can do?
Yeah, he said
Maybe
for
next year,
operating, he can't accommodate more than 10,000.
if we want to do more, put it in the capital plan next year?
Yes,
Oh, okay, good. I found where.
because he said that 40,000 capital was over 3 years, and the next one will also be for over 3 years.
Okay.
Otherwise, he welcomes any money he would like to add to his budget.
I think we had kind of gone through the rest of DPW there, right? That was just one open question.
That was the only outstanding item, yeah.
Okay. How about the always interesting snow and ice budget?
So with the changes in the governor's budget, we had put the snow and ice budget back up to what it is this year, which, as you'll remember from last year, if we do not fund it at the same level as the previous year, you cannot legally deficit that in, if there's a really bad weather and extensive weather events. So for that reason, we did put this back up to the 60,000 and 180,000.
It's based on the previous year budget, not, obviously not actual, because we don't
Correct.
know actual?
It has to be budgeted at the same level as the prior year.
Okay, so this has changed from 45 to 60?
Yes.
Oh, you're on the screen there. Okay, I'm just looking at the last version. Any other changes that we need to be aware of in this?
I'll make you aware of them. There's only 3.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on snow and
Of
ice?
course, yep.
What have we spent to date this year?
Pull that for you right now. Year to date for this year, we have spent 137,162.84.
137.
Mm-hmm.
And that's through the end of February?
That's as of this very second.
Sorry, when?
As of this exact moment.
Okay. What was 22? We were slightly over in 2022?
So 22, we did go slightly over, but we were able to handle that in year-end transfers. But last year was 270,079.83.
So the 150 for kind of external stays, right? That number hasn't changed, it's just the 45 internal that changed?
Yeah, it's putting the personnel back up to 60 and the expense back up to 180 for a 240 total.
Oh, okay, so the 150 went to 180?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. Okay, any other questions on that one? All right. I didn't have any questions on Board of Health, I don't know if anybody else did, but.
I do have one change on Board of Health. If you remember the extra $16,000 in the building expenses, that was typed in the wrong line. It should have been added to the outside services in Board of Health. So that 4,000 should be 20,000.
Sorry, what, in which line is?
Board of Health outside services.
Outside services, okay.
Yep, you'll see it's 4,000. It should be 20,000. The extra 16,000 is for that mental health referral system.
Okay, so that's one of your other changes?
Yep.
Okay.
So you would reduce it in building, and I can recirculate this spreadsheet.
Did you just say we reduce it where?
There was an extra $16,000 in the building department expenses.
Okay, that's why.
Oh, okay.
So it was presented as $16,700, and it should have just been $700.
We were asking you, that's one you were stumped on last
Yes.
time, whatever, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
There's always one, at least.
And the 16,000, that's for everyone? That's town and school?
Yep, so as of right now, it's only been utilized by the school, but it is available to everyone. And from speaking with the schools, they find this to be extremely valuable. So we did sign a new contract for the service.
And it's the staff?
Hmm?
It's just staff?
No, it's staff to refer the students. They can also refer, like, themselves, but it's been being utilized, referring the students for extra support.
Okay. Senior Center? Again, I had no questions here. There's nothing significantly different from previous. Can we just talk about the veterans agent, just to give us kind of the overview there? Then there've been years we've kind of focused on that. It's all the same this year, but I don't want to just blow by it without.
Yep, so
Talking about
the
it.
Veteran Service Agent is a shared resource with the City of Lynn. So Mike, the agent that helps Swampscott, and he tends to all of our veterans. His office handles all of that. They also are the ones who handle putting out the flags for Veterans Memorial Day and having some events.
Excuse me, Amy,
Yes,
it's Naomi.
hi.
Something just changed with the microphone and I can't hear you very well. It sounds like you're far away.
Naomi, can you hear me now?
Much better, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Ethan. So if you'll remember last year when we were setting the FY23 budget, at the request of Mike Sweeney, we had rolled all those expense lines up to one to just do a flat fee instead of them parsing out the Memorial Day and Veterans Day supplies and regular expenses, because he just puts that all through his office and it was cleaner and easier for them. The assistance line is the actual assistance payments that get paid to the veterans in town. So we get a list from their office. Is it monthly or quarterly? Okay, so monthly we get a list from their office of the checks to process, and we just cut those. So that's what the 50,000 is.
And that's just defined based on whatever table however they defined it within
Yep.
the veterans. group?
However, it's determined.
And everybody is eligible, it's not need-based in any way, it's just you get it
Yeah,
regardless
it's
of
based,
everything?
I can double check with him on the actual formula, but I believe it's based off, years of service, rank, and
Yeah.
all of that.
Okay, and there's no funding source anywhere for that, there's just the town takes it, there's no other way to cover that cost anyway?
Yep, so if, 17 veterans move to town, we.
Yeah, right, you pay more money. Okay. So the library, I highlighted a lot of things, but it's a lot of CBA stuff, but maybe we could just kind of have a general discussion on that, unless anybody has specific questions, but a lot of ups and downs, new roles, it seems, or changes in salaries, and
Yeah, so it's not so much changes in salaries. The collective bargaining unit is still made of there's the same number of staff in here. It's just with the new director, he was just changing what lines people were getting charged out of because, there isn't really an adult assistant anymore. But it was the person who replaced the person who used to be the adult assistant who was getting charged out of that line. So he was just putting people in for the roles that they actually have. So that CBA is still made up of the same 16 members, 4 of which are full-time, 12 of which are part-time.
12 are part-time?
Mm-hmm.
So, I hear what you're saying, but if we look at the circulation librarian, maybe take an example. Right, so
Yeah.
the circulation librarian has gone back, the 5-year average is 44,000, last year we voted 50, and somehow it's ballooned to 164, so that's multiple people being moved into that by the
Yeah, so
director?
that is the library assistants and the librarians who are moved into that.
Yeah, I can see the librarian row itself is zeroed out, so 68,000 out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part-time adult assistants out, library assistants out, okay. Catching on.
So were the effects of the movement, was that zero, and the change in the salary line item is the CBA
Yes.
change?
Yep, and there were, I believe there were 2 people that there were adjustments made to their hours, but they were part-time, so it was minor.
And according to your sheet here, library has 11,000 of 53rd week,
Yes.
right? So that accounts for the 10 by
Mhm.
itself even.
Does this include the school librarians? No.
No,
No,
this
it's
is
just
just
the
the ones who
library,
work
library.
in the
Right.
library.
Do you know how many, they get a lot of grant money, right, they can just spend? Do you know how much that is?
I would have to check. I know that the new director has written a few grants and is waiting to hear back. But there was only 1 grant in the last 2 years that was actually for personnel. And that was an LTA grant, which I believe was 12,000.
How much do they get for operations? They get other kinds of grants, right, besides?
They get,
personnel?
they get state aid, which gets put directly in its own fund for use of the library.
Do you know how much that is?
I can pull it up for you.
Is that like, can you not like use it for recurring expenses type of thing? Is it that type of limitation?
It could be. Their state aid right now has 130,000 in the fund. They receive about 30,000 annually.
So they've got 130,000 set aside, like a reserve?
They have 130,000 right now in that fund, yeah. But they receive about 30 of it annually.
It's kind of a black box to me, as it apparently is to the rest of us probably, because we didn't know that number, right?
Great, if they have that much, does it mean that they haven't spent any of it in 4 years?
They were building it up because of the library renovations, and they're also using some of the state aid to fund the new library website that they put out to RFP.
But just conceptually, I mean, we don't look at it because it's not part of the operating budget, but it obviously has a financial impact to the town because we're getting grant money, so. Is there, I hate to ask for something new, but is there something that you can summarize for us? Like to, I don't know how many other groups have grant funds with I'll call it off-book money.
It depends. So obviously the grants, state aid's different from the grants. So
Okay.
state aid has more wide use, whereas grants are the ones that, you know, more explicitly you have community development
Yeah.
saying they got a grant for X purpose. So it's a one-time purpose that they need it for. It's not really ongoing things.
So did you just say this is state aid?
This is state aid, yeah.
So do they have more grants besides what they got for teachers?
They didn't have any grants for teachers.
Oh, I thought you just said they got a $12,000 grant for,
For LTA, it was a specific grant for them to digitize some of their records
oh, is that, and that's the only grant they've gotten?
in the last 2 years, yeah.
So the police have grants, don't they? Separate grants?
Anyone's able to write grants. I know the fire chief got a grant for one of their, for some of the upgrades that they needed as well.
But the library director's new, right?
Yes,
When did he start?
he started in, I believe he started right before town meeting, or right after. So he started in the early summer. He was in that wave of people.
So I guess what I'd ask Amy, and I'm open to other suggestions, but I'd just like to see what the numbers are, not that we're necessarily gonna make some kind of request, but I wouldn't want to be sitting here not knowing that there's 130 sitting there for state aid that's in a fund that they're building up, and there's another 130 over here and 250 over there, and it adds up to, you know.
Do you
quite a
want
bit of money.
all grants, like federal, state, and?
I think that's what I want, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only make the face because I don't think you realize the extent of what you're going to get.
Well, tell me
But
about it.
that's
What-
fine.
Is it something you already have, that's just, you already have schedules on
It's
it?
just something we can download out of Munis.
Okay.
It's just, you know, if you want more detail, that's where,
Why don't we start with a simple download, and then we'll look at it and decide if we need more analysis or whatever, but I think we should at least understand it.
Are you
Oh, that's
asking
a good
just for
idea.
the library? or-
No, I'm asking for any state aid, like reserve funds, or an activity of state aid, just so we have a feel for what they're getting. Because just because it doesn't show in this, it doesn't mean the town's not spending the money, and so I think we should at least be aware of what the inflows and outflows are. And then I guess I'm asking for grants too, if there's things that aren't transparent to us for grants.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
You guys good with that?
Did we take this into account last term?
sorry.
like 400,000 with the rec department or something like that?
Yeah, good
That's the
example.
revolving.
Revolving, but similar idea.
Yeah, I think conceptually, that's what we're trying to understand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say?
Did we take this into account from last year? Or is this something just?
No, we didn't talk about it or know about it
Yeah.
specifically, but it doesn't impact the operating budget, so we didn't necessarily have to, but.
I think we've talked about it in some years,
Yeah.
for sure. And
If
then
you,
we just let it slide.
If you look at the audited financials you have, that also lists out all the different funds that we have.
Is it all in one place in those audited financials?
You like it when you give it.
I'm like, I just
Yeah.
looked at our CFA today, because that just got issued. And that one is specifically for federal grant monies, but I don't think they're all listed out. I think they consolidated it in there.
I think if you do the export from, that would be a good starting point, Amy, thank you. All right, aside from that, there's not much else going on in the library now that we understand the net change, I think. So recreation. So can we just talk about that briefly? All right, we have the revolving fund for recreation, right?
Yep, so this is just the general fund portion.
Yeah,
Auxiliary staff is the lifeguards that you
Yep.
see down the beaches. It's typically for 10 weeks, 2 persons per shift, and I believe there's one beach that's not as busy, that is typically only staffed on the weekends.
okay. And then when we go through the expenses, like beach sticker processing, it costs us $15,000 to process beach stickers?
Yeah, so this is something the rec director and the town administrator and I were talking about earlier. So right now, where the beach stickers have to be purchased online, it's through City Hall systems. They purchase it and it gets mailed from there. So the processing is that added cost. We have talked about this year bringing them, still allowing people to have the option to order them through City Hall system if they want to just order it online and have it mailed to them, but also bringing them back to town hall so you can just go to resident services and get a beach sticker there.
Or what about just adding the fee of processing to the cost when they're buying it from City Hall Services?
I mean, we could do that. I don't,
I'm not sure beach stickers.
I,
I think they're $20.
yeah. I know that we are discussing, changing the fee this year. I believe it's $8 for seniors and 20 for other residents.
Okay. I'm gonna suggest we skip debt service because we're gonna talk about that.
Back on revolving fund,
Yeah.
what'd you say the balance is in the revolving fund account?
I can pull it up right now. As of this moment, it's $391,279.
What's the plan for that?
We have already ordered the sailboats that were not done in capital last year, and were instead done through rec revolving. So that expense hasn't hit yet because we don't pay until they're received.
How much do you think that's gonna be?
I believe that was about 30.
Is it 80?
Yeah. I would've said 40,
I
but,
thought it was like 40,000.
yeah,
Oh,
40,
40.
yeah,
I think it was 30.
30.
Yeah.
30 for sailboats.
Yeah.
And maybe 10 for the paddle boards or something? I feel like 40
Yeah.
sounds right.
Okay.
And then, right now, they just opened up the calendar for their summer program, so there's extra revenue in there from people who have already started signing up and paying, but we haven't realized the expenses yet for it, because those don't happen until the event happens. So it is very cyclical. I do have a plan from the recreation director and the assistant director on how they were going to expend their fund this year. So I can share that with you guys. if you
Yeah, that would be, please, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm assuming they have, their general practice is to keep some dollars in there and not necessarily spend it all, right?
No, so they do have a baseline of what they consider the cushion to be. And they also have added some new programming this year. So I know that they added an extended day park league, a rain or shine extended day park league. So that way, you know, parents have that assurance that rain or shine, their kids will be at Park
Yeah.
League. It's also a longer day. I believe the original was only like 3 or 4 hours a day. And that's been something that was requested. And then, obviously, the increase in the paddleboard programming. And I believe there was one more that they added.
How many sailboats are they getting for $30,000?
That was 2.
How many do they have altogether?
I want to say they have 4, but I am not positive on that.
Would've thought
I
more.
think they have probably, with the 2 new ones, close to 10.
Okay.
It's more than 5.
Do they all need to be replaced, would you know?
I think that with the 2 new ones, maybe it becomes a cycle where they buy a couple every few years, but I think in general, the conditions aren't too bad.
Just curious.
But I mean, if the program expanded, they probably need more boats too.
Yeah.
Are they committed to taking care of their own sailboats through the Recreation Revolving Fund? Are they committed to maintaining and buying new boats
Yes.
through the Recreation Revolving Fund?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just curious.
I believe there's a nonprofit though, Friends of Swampscott Sailing, that does help with some costs, maintenance.
Just donations, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
Was there a fundraiser for fireworks on St. Patty's Day?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what the proceeds were
I believe 4,000.
for?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if that was what their hope was? That did they have a hope? Sounds relatively
They
low
always
to
have
me.
hopes. Yeah, the thing that came up with it was we were allowed to use the golf course free of cost except for food every other year, and Marblehead gets it free of cost on the off years. But because of work that we had done in the past at the golf course, they gave us it for free for 10 years. So this is the first year where we don't have it for free. So we're not going to have as much proceeds from the golf tournament this year that we previously do, and that obviously funds 4th of July. So there are added fundraisers this year.
How much is the 4th of July fireworks?
It's a $10,000 deposit, and then I believe our portion is an additional 20 or 24,000.
And so the 10,000 here is just the deposit.
Mm-hmm.
What's Lynn's portion? Is it the same?
No, much
More?
higher.
Do you know how much more?
No, we only negotiate how much we contribute to it. So if they decide to scale back, then that would be a different conversation, but they pay the whole bill and we just give X amount that's negotiated annually to Lynn for it.
So
How-
third-
how does that work?
So we pay 34,000 in total and they pay everything else?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe all they're paying is $34,000. How do we know what they're paying?
I believe when the town administrator and recreation director meet with them, they discuss previous costs.
I thought it was roughly 100,000.
What?
I think the total cost is roughly 100,000.
Wow,
I don't know about that. Lynn's,
that seems kind of a lot for 4th of July.
maybe they're using
That
ARPA
seems
monies.
kind of a lot.
Fireworks, commercial grade fireworks are actually extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Because I had the same conversation the first year I started, because I was like, this seems really expensive for fireworks. And they were like, yeah, if we only spent $34,000 on fireworks, it would be over in like 2 minutes. And I was like, oh.
Bang, bang, done.
Yeah.
Yay.
That's what we would get. But it's also the cost of like the barge to go out is also a very high cost.
And then people did.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a-
Come on down, Naomi, we got a chair for you at the end.
Yeah, but it's handled by them.
Okay. Guys ready to move on to employee benefits? I'm just gonna skip the debt service for now. So Amy, maybe we just talk about this a little bit. I mean, I did go through and kind of look at the PEREC memo they gave us and found all the numbers in the appropriate departments, but can you talk about the workers' comp, a bit of the workers' comp benefits number? And is that like a set number? Is that estimated, or what's it?
That's a set number, so we pay for a workers' comp policy, and that is what that policy is each year. They handle all the claims for us, they handle everything else, so that's not a fluctuating number. And it does vary, like every other insurance, based off like the risk and previous year's claims.
How many years of negotiation for that do we do? Is it annual?
So that's part of the property and casualty insurance, that's all through the same broker. So we negotiate that each year.
I thought those were still being negotiated, the property and casualty, but this one's locked down, you're saying?
Nope,
Oh.
this is also an estimate.
Oh, it is, okay. I thought you said this was a set, okay.
Nope. In theory, it's a set number.
Yeah, okay. So it could change before town meeting, I think is what you're saying, right?
Yes. So we obviously have the broker that we use now, giving us updated quotes as well as reaching out to other companies and getting quotes from them.
Do we go out for bid for that?
Hmm?
Do we go out for bid for that?
So we don't have to go out to formal bid, we can just request quotes.
Do we do that?
We just started the process recently though, so we don't have all of them in yet.
The policy covers the town as a whole, or does it go by department?
Nope, it's town as a whole.
Does that depend on, like, what we, how many people we have in different departments?
Yeah, so when we do our workers' comp audit every year, like with the insurance company, we have to go through all the hours and wages for each employee, classify them accordingly, and there's a different risk rate depending on, like obviously a police officer or a DPW worker is a higher risk category than a town hall employee. And so it's based off of all of that information.
And then that's just borne, that cost is, for the town as a whole, we don't allocate to the different departments.
Nope, that's everyone, that's town, school, every single employee.
How about the employee group health?
So that number has gone up just because of the increase in state aid.
I mean,
Which
you
number?
provisioned more there because you had more money, and you know
Yeah.
it's gonna be higher, basically.
health.
Yeah, so when we got the presentation from the Group Insurance Commission, they said to anticipate anywhere between 4% and 8.1% increases on the rates. The curveball that we received this year is that a couple of the plans are no longer continuing. So there are two plans, two active employee plans that they've eliminated and one Medicare plan that is eliminated. Two active plans that were added, one active plan that changed its name but is fundamentally staying the same. Two active plans that they've combined into one, and two Medicare plans that they've combined into one.
So summarizing it, there was some plan changes, yes?
Lots of them, but the biggest curveball is, one of the plans that they removed is where 33% of our employees are on. So we are guessing and estimating where these people might go to figure out how much it's going to cost, because we don't know if they're going to go with one of the new plans. We don't know if they're going to go to the second most popular plan. And obviously, there's huge variations in
When
those.
is open enrollment?
Open enrollment is next week. It goes April to May 3rd. So we will have everyone's final settlement before we get to town meeting, but it unfortunately might end up being a very last minute.
So it's simply a people count times selected plan, right? You'll be able to
Yep.
calculate it? Okay.
Yeah, so we already have the sheet for it, and we can download the enrollment at any time from the GIC. It's just, I mean, my hope is obviously that most people make their changes in the first week or so of open enrollment, so that I have a better picture into it, but, and our HR department's gonna be giving me updates as often as they get them as well.
Do they have all the information information already on the plan?
Yep, so everything's already been released by GIC. They released the new rates. So now it's a matter of waiting for open enrollment and all the employees calling the different plans to see what coverage works for them.
How does the split between the town and the employee work these days?
So for the HMO plans, for the non-indemnity plans, it's 73% town, 27% employee. And for the indemnity plans, it's a 60-40 split, 60 town, 40% employee.
So the 7327 is medical? Is that what you said?
73% is covered by the town,
Yeah.
and 27% is covered by the employee for all the non-indemnity plans.
Right, which is like medical and dental and
No, this is just medical.
just medical, okay.
Yes.
I'm not sure, explain what you mean by non-indemnity plans then.
It's just the type of plan. So like an HMO, PPO, or POS is considered a non-indemnity plan.
Okay,
And that's what most people are familiar with in terms of insurance. The indemnity plans have a much wider network. So a lot of people who are on the indemnity plans are on them because they're retired and moved out of state and need more coverage, but they're not quite Medicare age, so they're still on the active plans. And then once they're on Medicare, they move on to the retiree Medicare plans.
So there's a lot less people that are currently employed in the indemnity plan? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so right now, with
So more
our-
people in the plan where the town pays 73%?
Yes, those are the more popular plans. So right now for active employees, out of 373 active non-Medicare plans, 11 of them are on an indemnity plan. However, for the retiree Medicare plans, we have 401, of which 371 are on an indemnity plan.
Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
For the Medicare retiree plans,
Oh,
there's 401 people on them, 371 of which are on the indemnity plans.
so we've got about as many retired versus active
crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
people receiving healthcare benefits?
Yep, so as long as you have worked for the town for at least 10 years, you are allowed to have lifetime health insurance through the town.
You're allowed to have what health insurance?
Lifetime health insurance through the town.
Lifetime.
Yep,
It's
you
a
are
great
required,
benefit, and that's why
Yep.
it's so wonderful to work for the town.
you are required to
I know,
enroll in
10 years.
Medicare after, at the age of 65, but
So is that all, that's all done, the 10 years is all done via contract?
yeah, so it's tracked by the retirement system, MTRS and all of that. So it's years of service. It doesn't have to all be in Swampscott.
Does it have to be continuous? Like if you leave the town, you got 10 years, and then 10 years later, you're saying, I gotta check the box and take that insurance now?
Yeah, so like myself, who is not yet close to retirement age, I could work 10 years in different municipalities. And then when I hit retirement year, I put in for my retirement. And even though I wouldn't have worked in municipalities for like 15, 20 years at that point.
Is
So it's
there
where
a-
you retire from, that town pays the cost?
Is there I know you're not, even if you're not employed, is there no contribution? Like, do you have to pay anything? At that point, it's,
No, so like, just to use Swampscott as an example. So like if I did all 10 years in Swampscott and then reverted back to the private sector,
yep,
like I could do that. I got my 10 years. And then when I decide to retire, I send my thing into, probably not Nancy at that point, but send my paperwork into the retirement system and I just pick up health insurance.
and so it just goes to the OPEB cost line, basically? Wow, okay.
And then, so it's where you last worked? It's not allocated, so you could work,
It's where you're retired from.
2 years in Peabody, 2 years in Marblehead, 2 years in Swampscott, 2 years in Lynn, and then 2 years in Boxford, and Boxford pays.
So I believe that the retirement system does bill the other communities for their portions. Yeah. Because it's the same as, like if you retire from Swampscott, but you worked 5 years in Marblehead beforehand, like the Swampscott contributory retirement system is the one you'll get a check from. But they bill Marblehead retirement system for theirs, yes.
So that's,
Not necessarily half, but for their obligation.
so the $7 million group health insurance costs, it's, how much of it is for, I mean, I guess I should just split it, no, I can't just split it in half because of these other percentages. How much is for active employees of the 7 million that we're gonna pay?
So for, based
6.9?
on the enrollment in January, and with the assumptions of where people were gonna go from that plan, 5.15 is for active employees. About 1.2 million is for Medicare plans. There is about $30,000 for PEC stipends. There's a $10,000 fee to the administration of the cafeteria plan, $12,000 for life insurance premiums, $8,100 for Medicare Part B penalties for any retirees who enroll in Part B late, $555,500 for Medicare Part B premiums, which is 70% of the Part B premiums, and then a small contingency of, right now, about $200,000.
Are we paying the penalties for the retirees that didn't do that themselves?
Yep, it gets charged to us.
That
Why-
didn't do what themselves, sorry.
What's that?
That didn't do what themselves? I didn't,
They didn't enroll in Medicare, I think, is that what it was?
Yeah,
That
so if
on
you-
time, or something like that?
Yeah, so if you don't enroll in Medicare in time, like, I believe you have like 90 days after your 65th birthday. If you enroll late, the town is assessed penalties on it.
Well, not that the retirees can afford it, but why aren't the retirees paying for that penalty as opposed to the town? Because I've heard other towns where it's the retirees that are expected to pay it. And I'm not saying that they can
Mhm.
afford it or that they could afford it, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I believe right now it's part of our PEC agreement, that we pay that.
Does the town have a process to make sure that it gets, that we can eliminate penalties going forward?
Yeah, so we've been working with the retirement systems and MTRS to make sure that when people hit or approaching 65, that they're being notified and reminded to enroll in their Medicare Part B.
So these are people that don't work at the town, and we don't necessarily, we do know where they are?
Mhm.
And we have to call them to say, you have to enroll?
Yeah,
We have to
they
get
have
them
to
to
enroll
do it?
themselves, yeah.
Or we get penalized?
Mhm.
That's a lot.
assuming you do a mailing or something maybe, or, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we don't, I say we, the town, we don't have like always the most up-to-date contact information or anything on that, so it is the retirement system that normally communicates that with them.
So there's one employee of the retirement system.
There's a full-time admin and a part-time admin for the retirement system right now.
So if someone works in Swampscott for 2 years, and then works in Marblehead for 8, and then they retire, our portion for those 2 years, where does that come out of the budget? If we
You're
get, say
talking
we
like for
have,
their pension?
for our healthcare and pension, our obligation.
Right in here.
Is it part of these line items, or
It
is
would be, if someone does not retire from Swampscott, it would just be part of that pension line. So what's in the health insurance line is just, it's not people that could enroll in health insurance, it's who's currently enrolled in ours. And the contingency is for, you know, people who either switch from an individual or family plan or additional FTEs that get hired.
Yeah, I mean, I was asking, well, you earlier had said that if someone retires, you know, we have to, if someone retires from here, we have to pay it.
Mhm.
But then if they've worked in other municipalities, they pay a portion of that? So if someone, so the reverse, right? If someone worked here and then retires from someone else,
Mhm.
then we have also some payment obligation.
That would be in the pension obligation.
And so that's part of this pension obligation line, or where is that?
Oh, yeah, so when you look at the contributory pension line, that 5.934,
Yeah,
that's where all of that is.
okay,
So that's all of our pension obligation for that fiscal year.
okay, so not just people that retired from here, but also,
Mhm.
okay.
So retiree health is under pension?
Retiree health for people who are on our actual health insurance is in part of that employee group health.
Open, okay.
If
Doesn't
someone
matter if they're retired or not, if they're, that's where the cost of
Yeah,
enrolled.
anyone who is on our
people,
health
right.
insurance is in there. If someone retired from another system and we are paying our obligation to them, that would be
In the pension.
part of the pension.
That's weird. Yeah, okay, that's what I
And then-
understand, but okay.
And you said there was like 300 something active employees and 400 something retirees.
Yeah.
On Medicare, yeah.
373 active.
Yeah, so the 400
400 more.
retirees, that includes people on Medicare, right?
That is only people on Medicare.
Okay,
So those are Medicare supplement plans.
got it.
So does it work like that with pensions too, not just health? So for example, somebody retires, but they worked here for however many years it takes to qualify for pension. They get that from, do they get part of the payment for their pension payment out of Swampscott and Marblehead in this?
You only receive one check. So that is where,
But does it come from Swampscott even if they worked 17 years or whatever? Is it 10 years for pension too, or is it 20?
yeah, it's 10, and I believe you get 20 or 25% of your average of your highest 3 consecutive earning years. But, so, yes, if you worked for Swampscott and that's where you retired from, you would receive a paycheck, a pension check from the Swampscott Contributory Retirement System.
Right.
Behind the scenes, Swampscott Contributory Retirement is billing every other place that you worked for
Okay,
your obligation portion.
wow.
So you would only receive one check. Everything is being reconciled and handled behind the scenes.
But their pension is based on the highest 3 years of
It's the
that?
highest 3 consecutive earning years. It does not have to be the most recent,
Okay.
and it's the average of those.
And it's how much of the average? The entire amount?
It depends on how many years of service you have and the age at which you retire.
So can you just give a quick,
So the maximum is 80%. So the max that you could ever receive is 80%, and the chart caps out at 65. So if you started your career young enough to have hit, I believe it's 20 years.
and you're 65?
Yeah, it's 20, 25, something like that. But you have to have done that many years to hit the 80. So depending, if you only did 10 years and retired at like 55, you'd only get, I believe it's 20 or 25%.
So it would be 80% of your highest, of the average of your highest 3 years for the rest of your life?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so the annuity is,
Deal.
the annuity is
Yeah.
paid out first.
It's very good.
Yeah, the annuity is paid out first, and then the pension kicks in second. There's also 4 different options that you can elect when you retire. If you get the whole amount, if you're gonna get it, and your surviving spouse is gonna get it, all different,
Is this standard with
yes.
Municipal.
all, it's not all municipalities, well, is it all municipalities?
States,
On the
states
pension
on a
and
different
the health,
tier,
not
but-
on the health, because the health could be split differently, right?
Yeah, so health is based off of that municipality's, you can either have a PEC agreement like we do that encompasses everyone in all collective bargaining, or I believe it would be a bit of a nightmare, but you could also negotiate different amounts with each collective bargaining like union and everyone separately.
What's the PEC agreement? What's that stand for?
Public employee,
Oh, okay, contribution or something?
yeah, I always forget, What is it? It is commission, okay.
What,
So,
commission? Thank you.
so just a couple of questions, because as this relates to like the unfunded pension liability and the OPEB liability, right? So how do we, I think we asked this question, or it came up in one of our prior meetings, like, we've got whatever it is, 7.2 million of employee group health cost.
Yes,
That includes people who have retired.
yes.
So to me, that's post-employment benefit cost, in theory, because they are not employed anymore, but they're getting benefit cost. That's how I'm thinking of that. But I know we have this unfunded OPEB liability that I don't think we're putting any money in away this year, but we have in the past. So how do you understand the difference between what's running through the operating budget in the current year versus this unfunded liability that kind of sounds like it's for at least a component of those same benefits?
Do you want that? I'm going to defer to Patrick.
Good question.
So we are on a pay-as-you-go basis with these post-employment benefits. So that means all of our cost is in the operating budget. We have the OPEB trust fund, which was established to build us up eventually to a point where we might be able to calculate an actuarially defined contribution for each year, just as we do with the pension liability, and use that as, a structured way to shift away from pay-as-you-go, and now we're offsetting some or all of that cost through this reserve. The reserve isn't built up at that point. We don't use the reserve to pay these costs. We don't have an actuarially determined contribution at this time, and that's just a matter of policy. I think there's been conversations in the past, and obviously the pension is, we're required to fund that by a certain date. The OPEB liability, we are not at this time.
Right.
So we are pointing the available funds at the pension obligation.
What's the unfunded OPEB liability and the unfunded pension liability now?
The unfunded OPEB liability, most recently calculated, it was approximately $98 million.
How about pension these days?
It was 40.
Pension?
The pension, Amy, do you know the unfunded pension? Is it?
We're going to get a new assessment within the next month, because it's a valuation year. So I'll share that with the committee as soon as we get it. But we're waiting to see how the market fluctuated after 2022.
What was it, what was the last amount that we had?
I thought it was 27.
No, it's gotta be more than that. I think. Okay, it was only 27 now. It is.
I'm so curious how other towns are paying down their OPEB, like that responsibility. How are towns doing it? Like, we're not the only ones with this huge number.
No. No. The priority, I think, for most municipalities is the pension, because that's regulated by the state and has to be funded by a certain date.
Amy, I think the financials you sent at the end of '22, said the ending pension liability is like 115 million? Yeah.
So are we thinking it's gonna go up because of what's happened with investment?
Yeah, so 2021 was a really good market performance year, but 2022 was not a good market performance year, so we're trying to see how that shakes out. Our actuary is already working on that new valuation, so the board should be getting that in April. Nothing in that will affect FY24's appropriation.
Oh, good.
Does the contribution, pension contribution, is that what we're contributing to the pension fund as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's already been negotiated, retirement board has approved that number?
Yep, so that's not negotiated, that is the retirement system votes a funding schedule, and it is assessed to the town. So it just is.
It's out of our purview, right? We don't have any, they decide what it's going to be by working with their advisors and coming up with, what's 2031 is the payoff schedule?
As of right
like
now,
that?
yes.
Yeah.
And at that point, the 115 has to be 0, is that right?
So when we are doing FY 2032, the year in which we have funded our pension system, we will just have current year contributions, and the remainder of those funds would be directed to paying off OPEB.
The remainder of what funds? You lost me there.
So out of the 5.9,
Yeah.
once we hit FY 2032, or the year after we have fully funded the pension obligation, we'll still have a contribution every year. But it will just be that actual current year's obligation.
So we should expect the 5.9 to drop to some much lower number because we're no longer funding the unfunded liability.
Yes.
Just paying is that also pay as you go at that point, Patrick, or is that?
Yeah, so we would just be paying, that future year's obligation in
Yeah.
each year. So if I want to just guesstimate and say that it's $900,000, then we would have $5 million at that point to start
So
paying down the OPEB liability.
it's just you say guesstimate, though. Can we not determine that number? I think we've come up with, we talked about this before, but
No, I would be really amazing at my job if I could guesstimate 2032, but.
no, but no, but in today, like of the 5.9 that we have in the operating budget.
No, so I checked with Nancy on that, and the way it's done is it would actually cost a lot of money to have our actuary break out, like, what's current year obligation versus prior year obligation. And obviously, the retirement board is not going to pay for that.
But you know how much right now is the current contribution of this 5.9 million versus the contribution to fund the unfunded pension liability just in fiscal '24?
No.
She doesn't, no.
How is that possible? You don't?
That's something that the actuary would have to break out separately.
But don't they do that when they come up with their actuarial report? Because in your disclosure document, don't you have that whole breakdown of the current contribution versus the amortization of the unfunded pension liability? Don't you show that? I think you do. No,
I
don't you
can
show
double
that?
check it, but
I think it's in the audit. But
The town's audit or the retirement?
I'm thinking the town's audit. Because we use it all the time in that retirement section of your disclosure document. So I think that so we're always showing the amortization of the unfunded pension liability. All I have to do is subtract that from this total contribution, fiscal '24. Well, also, what I think the whole finance committee knows, you don't have to permanently fund that until 2040 by state law.
correct.
But the retirement board gets to decide how
They
far
vote
it
the funding
goes. So the
schedule.
town and the retirement board would have to kind of somehow think together to extend it past 2031. But when you get a new number, and it's something awful, and it's going to impact each year between now and 2031, you might be, I don't know what the town might be thinking, but, or what the finance committee might be thinking.
Who's covered by the pension? Is it town and school or just town or?
So it is all town employees, including the school, less people who are in mass teachers retirement system, less people who are in, if you are under 20 hours, then you are in a separate retirement system. So it's all employees who work 20 hours or more, regardless of whether you're employed by the town or school, but certain school employees are in the mass teachers retirement system based off certifications.
So those are the teachers, but all the other school employees who
Yes.
are not teachers are in there.
So most of the schools there, which is mostly teachers,
Yes,
are not in this plan.
on the state
Yes.
plan.
Yeah, right, that's what I thought. Okay,
For
so it's all the
pension
non-
only, not health.
Like teachers' aides, are
Yeah.
they teachers for this purpose? Or are they-
It honestly depends on if you have the certification. So if you have certain certifications, you are in mass teachers regardless of your position.
Okay.
But so the town's pension, town is picking up the pension cost for all but the teachers in the school department.
Yeah,
So just
So it's
to,
not in the school budget.
no.
right. So just to go through the thought process of when we get to 2031 or whatever that magic year is. I'm under the assumption that we're actually making this payment to the pension fund, this $5.9 million in
Yes,
some way,
we,
right? So,
we wire them the money on July 1st.
okay. So at that point in time, whatever's due, however the actuary does it, whatever we should have in that liability, we will have in that liability. right? So there'll be no more wiring to be done because it'll be fully funded.
Mm-hmm.
But then every year, we'll calculate what the current amount due is, and we'll send that to them, but that's the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose that every year, the new amount could go up or down based on market fluctuations or whatever else could impact that.
Yeah, so it's usually every 2, so we do a new valuation every 2 years. So you're pretty certain on year 1 and 2. So in this case, it's a new valuation year, so FY '25 and FY '26 will be set from the new funding schedule because it's voted by the retirement system in the next couple months. And then after that, we'll do a new valuation cycle.
So did they pick a number for next year already? Like, it sounds like they already know, there won't be a debate about what next year's retirement number is?
Like FY '24?
25.
Oh, FY '25, no, so that's what we're gonna get. So we haven't even seen the stuff from the actuary yet on the valuation.
Okay, so are we in the second year of a 2-year cycle this year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I thought you said we're in the first year, okay.
No. This is a valuation year, but FY '23 and '24 were set from the last valuation year.
Okay.
It's a lot of straddling fiscal
Yeah,
years
yeah.
here.
All right, anybody else, any more questions on that crystal clear topic?
I just have one question on the payroll tax.
Yes.
Is that because our payroll is increased by 5%? We have more employees? How do we get to that number?
So the additional $25,000 is partially from the 53rd week and partially from just the increase in wages overall, because it is just a percentage, 1.45? 1.45 of wages.
What tax is 1.45 of wages?
Medicare,
Medicare.
Oh, it's just,
employer Medicare.
it's just all it is? Okay.
Mhm. We don't do social
Yeah, there's
security
no,
here.
okay, yeah.
You're like, wait, that percentage should be higher.
Can you just quickly, what's a non-contributory pension cost, the 13.6?
So, way back in the day, employees were paid directly by the town when they retired, before the contributory system was in. So there is one remaining person in that.
Can you explain why we have an unfunded pension liability? I think that's an important thing to.
Yeah, so way back in the day, pretty much every city and town was not paying into the pension system for what they should have to prepare for this future liability.
And there was no regulation that said they had to.
There was nothing that said that they had to, and then everyone realized, oh, this is a really bad idea. So they passed legislation that said that you had to start funding this at a, this schedule. I believe they've already extended the date once when they extended it to 2040. There is rummaging that they may extend it again, but I think it's going to depend on how people are doing on track.
But current employees are supposedly paying their own way, so is that right? So
Current employees are paying into their annuity. It's the pension portion that can exceed it. So if that mythical Sally Swampscott started here when she was 18, put in, 30 years, and, well, she would have to put in more than 30 years, but she retires at 55, perfect health, and she is just living out her pension. She uses her annuity first, then the pension kicks in, which is beyond what she physically paid into
but
it.
the annuity comes from the paycheck?
The annuity is what you physically paid into it.
So is it something like 9%? I'm not sure. I mean, it supposedly
So
is.
for new employees, it's 9% plus 2% for any wages over $30,000.
And I think the unfunded came from people that were paying in like 5% back years ago. and
Yeah,
it's
they used to
still-
have different levels. I think there was also like 11s, some 2s, some 7s, so.
So is the 9% adequate to avoid creating new unfunded pension liability?
That is what we have from the state. so, yes. That's
Is
what
it the
they've
same for all
determined.
municipalities?
Mhm.
9%, and then this over
And then the
30,000,
two over 30,
11%?
yep.
So
Okay.
we're,
Hmm?
if we didn't have an unfunded pension liability
Yes.
and we kept doing what we're doing now, would we, are you saying essentially we would not be creating a new unfunded
Right.
pension liability if we keep paying what we're paying now? I mean, if we're paying, like, we're trying to catch up and pay off this unfunded liability,
Mhm.
but we're not making it worse, we're making it better with current employees,
Yes.
right? So we're not creating a new hole.
No, so once we hit 2031 or the end of the funding schedule, then we're entering into the year of doing what should have been done the whole time and just funding that year's liability.
Current year, whatever developed that year.
Yeah.
would run
That's
through.
if we pay it off by 2031.
If we fund it by 2031, yeah.
And- and-
That sets the date?
Hmm?
You said they set
The
the date
date,
for
the
2040?
state.
The state has legislation that has to be by 2040, but it's up to the individual retirement systems to determine the funding schedule that they have.
And so, like, we would have to issue debt if we need to pay $50 million or something? How do you get, what if the hole is too big for us to pay in 1 year?
So that's where the town would have conversations with the retirement system to say, you know, if we can't actually like keep enough staff on because of the pension obligation. So that is a conversation that we had with them, and a conversation that I had with our actuary. Disclosure, I am on the retirement board. You know, giving those recommendations of, hey, can you try to keep our funding schedule to this percentage? This is how much our budget can grow year to year. So as close as we can keep to that would be preferable, so that you're not creating more budgetary issues for the rest of the town. But like any other debt and obligation, the more you stretch it out, the more you're kind of stretching out those payments. So the overall obligation is higher, but it does ease the burden if you stretch it.
But if they lost in the pension system $50 million between now and 2031, or in 2030, or whatever, or there's some kind of event, then that'd be a reason to go to 2040, and it might be a reason for the state to say, hey, we're talking about 2050
Yeah,
or 2045. Especially the closer you get to 2040, if you're going out to 2040, the more you'd need to extend it further to deal with it if there was a problem right in 2039. So we've got some a lot of wiggle room, but it would cost more to go out. I
Which
think
is one of the arguments to not, every year, let's say, just keep pushing, right? Because that's what the retirement board, I think, says too. Do we want to try and, we're on this plan for 2030, want to be nice if we can afford to stay on that?
Yeah.
And, limit our risk for a black swan event or anything else like
So we
that.
can start paying OPEB liability.
Exactly, right, yeah. Amy, can you just, back on and I'll be done on this, but when you're saying the teachers or whatever, what comes out of their check first goes into an annuity. So maybe just expand on that, so they're, whatever they're paying, like their union dues or what, not union dues, but.
yep. It's the retirement
Yeah,
contribution.
the MTRS, whatever it says on the thing.
Yeah, so if they're in the retirement system and they have, a 9 and 2,
Yeah,
that shows us two different deduction lines on their paycheck. And every week when payroll is run, the report of that and all that information is given over to the retirement system, as well as, obviously, those deductions is
and
given
the
over
9 and
to them.
2, what's the difference between those two things?
It's both. So it's 9% plus the 2% on 30,000 and above. So if someone's earning $50,000,
Yeah.
they're getting 9% on $50,000, 2% on the 20,000, which is above the 30.
Okay, and that goes into the retirement system? And when they retire, how do they differentiate what their annuity was versus?
So that's all in the software for the retirement system. They currently use PTG. So that is tracking all of the annuity portion as well. So when someone's retiring, the admin will sit down and go through, what your highest 3 are, what your calculation is. PERAC approves it to make sure that everything was calculated correctly. So they determine what your monthly check is going to be. And it just eats away. So you deplete your annuity first before it kicks over to the pension amount. So the first paychecks you're getting, while your paychecks are relatively level the whole time, obviously adjustments for COLAs and COLA-based changes. But for the most part, you receive X amount every month for the remainder. And of that, you're just depleting your annuity first, and then it kicks in the pension. So for the retiree, they're receiving a check regardless. It shows in the
Not transparent to the
breakdown.
retiree, they just get the money and it doesn't.
Yeah, it does show on like the little detail at the bottom. They can see like the annuity and when the pension part kicks in, but.
Morbid question, if the retiree doesn't get to start collecting that pension, obviously it would go to a family member, or does it get refunded? What happens
After they've retired or before?
after they've retired?
So so there are different options that they can select. So if they selected, and I'm not even like gonna guess the letters because I'm gonna say it wrong. So if they selected one option, which is it's only paid out to them for the remainder of their life, any remaining annuity portion would be paid to their estate, but the pension would never be realized. If they chose another option, it's their surviving spouse would receive the remainder of the benefits for the remainder of their natural life. So they're different
At a lower
options.
payout value, though, if you choose that, right?
Yep, so both the retiree and their spouse would receive a lesser amount because it's assumed it would be going longer.
Yeah.
And those are all discussed when the person sits down to discuss their retirement.
This
It's
is,
also on the Mass Retirees website.
this is a really dumb question. I'm just mostly curious. If they were married and they got divorced, does the wife, and it was the employee was the husband, does the wife still receive a benefit? I'm just curious if that's coming from Town of Swampscott Retirement System to, that the,
Are you
in
going-
the divorce, it would be survive, it would keep going if the choice had been to split up the benefit? I know you don't know.
So are you
that,
going
and I
with
don't need to know.
Someone was married and got divorced and did not remarry?
Oh, yeah, they didn't remarry.
Okay. Then, in that case, the employee would work with the retirement system and their attorney to come up with the settlement in their divorce agreement.
I was just curious to understand how far Swampscott's responsibilities go
Yeah.
out. I was-
Yeah, so in the event of a divorce, the divorce agreement can only be for the duration of the employee's natural life. That
Okay.
a portion of it can be isolated and given to the former spouse. But
If they remarry, obviously, it goes over.
then it just gets really much more complex.
Okay.
So-
I think
so
we need to move on from this topic.
Only a current spouse can receive the surviving.
So do we use the GIC,
Yes.
and how long of commitment do we have to the GIC? Is it 1 year at a time, and then they change the rate at which the costs increase from year
So
to
the
year?
rates change annually, as well as sometimes the plan options with the
Okay.
GIC. We are with the GIC, at least for the duration of our PEC agreement, which I believe has another year and a half, almost a year and a half in it. At which point, I guess if we wanted to negotiate to switch to a private insurer,
Is it possible to be self-insured and then have some kind of an insurance cap on top of that, like an exposure cap on top of that? Does people do that? Do municipalities do that these days?
there are some municipalities that do it. Most of them have moved away from it just because the volatility and the expense involved. At the program that Trang and I were just at a few weeks ago, there were a couple communities that were saying they still are self-insured, but they're so small that they're kind of shielded from that, but most communities have moved away from that.
Do they put some kind of umbrella exposure?
Stop loss policies on those things.
You have to have specific insurance policies, and you have to have different liabilities set up for those, but it's very expensive.
It's also just harder to, with the claims coming, it's hard to have it consistent every year, what you're going to go up 3%, 5% or whatever.
Yeah, it also makes your budget a little too personal, because then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, the claims went up, but we know that
Someone's-
Sally just had a baby and she
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
jacked that up, or like, oh, well, Tom just had cancer and now look at what it did to our budget, like, that's terrible.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Yeah.
Exactly.
We laugh, but we all know that's how those
Exactly.
conversations end up going.
I'm ready, you guys ready to move on from this one?
Yeah.
I just, quickly, the Voc Tech,
Yes.
I guess just remind us why that's, why that's not part of the school budget, I guess, my first thought. Why isn't that like an outshoot of that? Any logic to that, or is that just the way it's always been kind of thing?
It's assessed to the town, so the town pays it. We can.
No, I'm not
obviously,
suggesting we make a change, I'm just, when I saw it there, I'm like, it's a school, right? Why is it not sitting in the school side of the ledger?
Yeah, I mean,
Isn't
our
that in
students are going
OPEB?
there instead of our
Number
own.
of other things.
Sorry?
Our students are going there instead of our own school.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's a relevant
Yeah.
question.
So I do have an update on the Voc Tech. I'm just trying to find my email. So we did receive our assessment. So the one in the budget is an estimate. So the 5% was the same increase that we received last year, which would have been spot on because their budget did go up about 5% this year. However, our enrollment went down. So we had 37 students who were at the Voc Tech the previous year, and now we're down to 29. So our assessment has gone down to, if this will open, there we go. Our assessment has gone down to $510,475.
Nice.
You said that was for 27?
510, 485.
Yeah, so what they do is they take their budget and then they proportionally spread it over the number of students from each community.
I think that's not happening next year.
So
When is that going down like that?
That's for FY '24.
Yes, the
Oh,
number
that's what I thought.
661 is changing.
Yeah. Okay, wrote it down.
So that's, is that a fixed per student cost, or is there like a
It's just
fixed
the
amount
proportionate
plus
amount,
variable?
so in their overall assessment, there are 1,309, there were 1,309 students enrolled on the October 1st, 2021 report, and based off the October 1st, 2022 report, it's 1,360, of which we are 29 of those 1,360. So proportionally, they take their overall budget of 21,581,424 and assess us our percentage of it.
I mean, I think that kind of explains why it's probably pulled out of the school budget, because we had estimated a 5% increase, which is above the 2.6% that we target. And then now we've got a 20% reduction in the year-over-year cost, which would theoretically create more money for our schools as a benefit.
Yeah, and I did reach out to Cheryl Herrick-Stella at the schools to see if she can find out if this is students leaving the Voc Tech to come back to
Yeah.
Swampscott Public Schools, or if this is just, if the 8 students,
The ebb and
the net
flow.
8, if it was, 12 students graduated and only 4
Yeah.
freshmen went in.
Well, they moved to private school, they left the town or whatever.
Yeah, so they're checking on that to see where those students went to, if they came back to Swampscott Public, or if it was just, more graduated than went in.
So, sorry to digress on this, but to your point, Matt, would this, like when we talked about the other budgeting model, right? That, well, 2 things. One, was this on the list of things to be an accommodated cost?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing, we did say, I think at some point, that we were going to try to model 2024's budget. Are you guys doing that behind the scenes, or is that on your list, or what's?
Yeah, so we're doing it behind the scenes. The finance director from the schools and I are also talking about like different modules, and it's more so we're trying to parse out, we've parsed out all the health insurance ones now to know active and retiree, how many were from the school and how many were from the town, and now we're trying to parse out the pension, which is obviously gonna be a much smaller percentage school and a much higher, it's gonna be very inverse from health insurance. But we're just parsing out all those pieces of it, to be able to show those clear changes.
Okay, so is that something we're gonna be able to look at before town meeting? Is that in your thought process, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was more so making sure that we got this.
No, I know, I
Yeah.
totally agree. I don't wanna slow this down for that, but I just wanna make sure that it's happening somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and if this ends up going to the wire, then we can do it right after town meeting.
Yeah, we don't have to have it, it would be nice to have, but,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, but I think even if we do it after town meeting, it still gives us sufficient time to discuss it and get it in place in term for FY '25 budgeting.
Is the school budget line item in here the right number, or is that an old place?
Yeah, I had sent the thing to the school. They had the wrong number in there. It was only about 2,800 off from this, but this is the number.
What about the Nahant stuff and special education?
So we don't put those in here because they're not ours anymore.
Okay, it just shows on their summary, yeah.
Yeah, the historical stuff
Yeah,
is still there.
okay. So this is the final number.
Just for comparison purposes, do you know what the per pupil cost is for Swampscott schools? Or even just for the high school?
Can you speak up? What'd you
We
just say?
don't know it
The
per school.
pupil cost for our students in the Swampscott schools.
Good question.
Yes, I have that on.
It's not separated out by school. So like
No.
elementary is a different cost than high school, but you just have sort of an aggregate.
Yeah. So, it's actually on the DESI website. I'm just pulling it back up. Because thankfully I have it favorited. So Swampscott's per pupil, the latest information from DESI is only up to date through 2021,
Oh,
but their stuff is always behind. But the per pupil for 2021 was $18,977.66. And for 2020, it was $17,320.66.
Does that include the special ed class?
Mm-hmm.
Just curious.
Is, yeah. I have no idea if it's good.
Okay. Any other questions on that, or
you're familiar with this?
what the state assessments section? I'm just noticing your note here. What
Yep,
it
so
said.
this
So my guess.
This second column, the 1.916900,
Yeah,
that is updated for the governor's budget. It will obviously change again when House Ways and Means releases theirs. But what you see here for 1,916,900 is the updated assessments from the governor's budget.
so that's why they're just at a flat, the governor's budget said everything's going up 2%, basically?
School
Mhm.
districts with Swampscott. And you can see this.
So when does that, this will change when the Ways and Means is done, is what you said?
Is yours showing the 1.901 or the 1.91?
1.916900 is what's on the
Okay,
screen.
nope, just wanted to make
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But everything in the column shows 2% on mine anyway. Increase versus last year, we got different columns showing on that thing, I think.
I don't know if column S is hidden on yours.
I'm looking at column Q, actually.
No, S is there.
This is over here, yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah, so-
2% increase versus last year, so.
Yeah, so I added an extra column on here.
Yeah,
So column R is the increase over last year for the town administrator's budget, and column S is for the finance committee budget.
so what's column Q?
Oh, sorry.
That's the 2% that I'm talking about.
Yeah, P and Q was town administrator, R and S is finance, sorry. Mostly, I just didn't want to rewrite all my formulas every time we reached another budget level.
Join us. I can't tell.
It's been a bit of a nightmare for you last year.
I'm still not following you, that may be so, because we haven't, there's no difference right now between town administrator and schools, FinCom, is there? Or maybe you're showing that $16,000 difference. We haven't, we're not different from, we've made no changes to the town administrator budget at this point.
So yours isn't matching what's on the screen? So like your
I
mosquito?
think it is, yeah. I guess we've got,
What's on the screen isn't matching my handout. Well, how is that possible? Do I have something different than what the latest version? So this is the latest, this is in the works. I don't have a iPhone, I don't.
Yeah, so on your mosquito control, if you have 24,602,
as,
that's
yes,
the
yeah.
town administrators.
Yeah, but
And the governor's budget is the 25,278.
We're missing a column.
we're just missing a column over here on these that printed out from what we'd been sent.
Which column are you missing?
The far right, I've got the 2% in all in that column, that's the last column I've got.
Okay, the other ones might be hidden, but I'm gonna recirculate the sheet after
Okay.
tonight's meeting.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
But yeah, so we had put in a 2% assumption when we did the town administrator's budget, just to be conservative, but still stick with the trends that we've had seen. Because the governor's budget wasn't released until 4 PM the day we were presenting the town administrator's budget. The 2.85% that you see on your screen is reflective of what actually changed for the assessments in the governor's budget.
Okay.
Was this question already asked? What changed the charter school assessment from the town administrator recommendation to the actual one that is next to it? Is that the,
So the town administrators was just a flat 2% to each line increase.
It was just an estimate at the time.
Yeah.
They didn't know.
oh, so the 1,293,000 is a better number?
Yep, that's the governor's.
And why did that go down?
We have no idea.
Oh, but it's not like there's less students that left Swampscott to go to the charter school.
Yeah, the state doesn't give us the detail behind the assessment or the receipts.
So do we know how many students are from Swampscott in the charter school?
I can ask the schools if they have that information.
I'd be curious what the trend is in that.
Why doesn't the state give us that information? I mean, why can't the state break down why
Is that a
they give us?
rhetorical question?
Because
No,
they
I
don't
mean-
have to. I'm not sure. They just don't give it to us. Like for any of them, for the receipts or the assessments. Like, I don't know how that air pollution district one gets calculated either.
Can we invite our state rep to,
Hmm?
can we invite our state rep to finance committee meeting? And
You can invite anyone you would like.
Sure, yeah. And say what, that we want the state to,
Answer our questions. Leadership.
You can go all the way up to Senator Creighton if you'd like.
Call up the Department of Education, see how far you get.
well, that's the end of the general fund, at least for first round. So we've got a half an hour left, for 9. Are we prepared to go through the, what do you call them? The water and sewer funds?
Enterprise?
Enterprise funds, or?
We're prepared, but I don't know if you want to do the debt with Patrick to
Yeah, I
solidly
mean,
rock
I'm not
up.
sure which one we're likely to fit in our half an hour.
Well, I was just thinking that would actually wrap up our full first pass-through of general fund.
To do the debt
To do
service
the
and
debt.
save the, I'm fine with that. Yeah, and
Okay.
Patrick's dying to do the debt service, I can tell.
I'm happy with that too.
So I'm assuming what you distributed to us, Patrick, is different than the kind of the draft you sent me, is that? I know I got
Yeah,
a
so
copy
I
at some
had-
point, but,
I had shared with the committee a week or two ago a link to a folder that has debt projections, the current draft of the capital plan, and some information that we gathered from department heads on the projects, as well as a link to recordings from the 2 long sessions we did with the CIC in October, where we went through with projects with department heads.
yeah.
So all that information is available in that folder. If you can't access it, reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get that information, but that was sent around. So what I've handed you today as a handout is some summary information. The first page is debt service projections for general fund and the 2 enterprise funds, as well as some different selections. We have debt exclusions and major projects broken out in there. That's the first page, and that's forward-looking. I've included 10 years on this sheet just so that it fits on your page, but the Excel document that you have goes out
Yeah.
30 or so. The next page is a draft summary of the capital plan by funding source. So it's just totals by the different funds or borrowing authorizations that will likely be seeked. And then the last 2 pages is a summary list of the individual projects that are in the current draft of the capital plan.
So if we go back to that first page,
Yes.
and I don't know because it's not displaying anymore, but we had like 3.8 million of principal and 3.2 million of interest. So those numbers, can we tie those back to this somehow? Or are they different?
Yep, so your very top, line 1 on the left, total general fund existing debt service, 6,502, 652.
Yep.
That is slightly below what you see in the budget proposal by about $20,000. So there's a buffer built into the budget proposal, but the actual existing debt service here is that 6,502, 652 for FY24.
Any way you can put it up on our screen?
Amy, are you able to? Oh, I'm sorry, Trang, are you able to just pull up that budget sheet? Yeah, the same one, and just go to the debt service.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
So 3869 and 3195 is right? Those are
Yep.
two. So, but where do we see those on here, Patrick? Is it added together or something for the 6?
Yep, so it's a 6,502, 652, and then right below that, there's short-term debt service of 543, 780 for FY24. So those added together will be just $23,000 shy of what's in the budget proposal there. on the
Okay.
screen.
Can I ask a favor on this spreadsheet that you guys put together? That's really great, but could you put page numbers on it in the future, maybe?
Oh, I can.
Just because when we were all talking, it's really hard to catch up with the page that you might be on. I've been having a problem.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's no problem.
Amy, did you take another copy of this? Patrick had the copies of that one.
Oh, is someone missing one? Matt?
Can you get one for me as well?
Okay, so you said it's about $18,000 difference or something? Is that,
Yeah, it should be about $23,000.
okay, I probably might have added it wrong.
Yep.
So will that ultimately get aligned, like the budget will change, or is that,
So this is, what you have on this sheet in front of you, that's not gonna change for FY24, that existing debt service.
okay?
That's what I have, that's gonna be due. What goes on this sheet here is
Yeah.
ultimately up to you to recommend, so we have a little bit of a buffer there for any unanticipated borrowing.
Okay, so you've got a positive cushion, you've got extra
Right.
cost in there.
Yep.
Okay.
So can I go back to my question that I started asking before we met?
Which was?
What the assumption is about stabilization fund going out to offset the
Sure, yeah.
elementary school? I'm trying to understand what we think we're applying in stabilization funds annually to offset, or first, I guess, on the debt exclusion for the elementary school that's on those two sheets that you provided.
Yes,
Are you assuming some amount of stabilization funds on that 3 million, or is that 3 million the actual amount of the debt service on the elementary school bond that we've issued to date?
that is the actual and projected that we will need to pay. So that's the actual, that's not net of any stabilization use.
You're never netting anything here, right? If we're using funds, it would show somewhere else.
This is what we will actually have to
Yeah.
appropriate in the budget.
So does it include the extra money that the elementary school is gonna cost when we went out for bid? The
Yes,
extra
so-
3 or 4 million or whatever it is?
Yes, so if you look under the debt exclusions section, you go down about halfway, there's 2 lines for elementary school. So the first line is the actual debt that was issued last March of '22. And you'll see there's a $3 million figure that carries, that's the debt service on that bond for the school, the $60 million. And then there is an additional amount authorized on the next line, and that was the additional, I believe it's on my other sheet, but the $4 million that we had projected going out. And then there is the additional contingency that was voted at special town meeting. That's not rolled in here. But if we needed to use that, that would have to be rolled in as well.
So there's no stabilization funds are used on this. I guess the only number on all of this that causes me concern is when the middle school hits, and it's another $1.5 million every year. And I guess I'm curious, what is anybody thinking about the use of stabilization funds to offset any of this up front? Or maybe we're not anymore, or maybe we are?
To upfront, we would analyze that at the time. Are you talking about for the middle school?
No, the elementary school.
Oh, the elementary school. Yeah, but prior to issuance, we would analyze that and see if there's a benefit.
Well, we have to appropriate stabilization funds, so we're planning to have a vote of stabilization funds at town meeting to offset the debt service?
Not for annual. We would take it up at a special, when we're closer to tax rate,
So in September of this year, we might consider that?
in that time, general timeframe, yes.
But so right now, if we appropriate the full amount of this debt service, not that we wouldn't, because it's already been issued. It's already obligated. But that assumes the gross amount of the debt exclusion, and it's not offset on it would be offset on the recap with any stabilization funds that the town votes to offset that. But when we first authorized the debt, there was a discussion as to how to sort of ease in the impact of that, because we were accelerating the debt to take advantage of interest rates. So I guess I'm curious, did somebody stop thinking that they want to do that anymore?
Nope, that's still the intention. It's a matter of timing. My understanding is, to determine the best use of stabilization to offset the tax impact, you really need to know the assessed values in each year. So we have a clearer picture of where assessed values are going later in the year. So to do it now, it would be kind of.
So I'm just curious, is the plan still to do 1 or 2 years of easing in, or is it, and I'm just wondering what happens to stabilization funds as we do it, and what happens when we build this middle school, the middle school where it jumps up $1.5 million every year on this projection. So I'm just curious, at what point might the town be able to share with the finance committee any kind of options associated with that, or plans, or anything? I mean, I've been kind of curious about it for a while now.
Yes.
Since before we issued the debt, actually, I've been curious as to what was the plan for the use of stabilization funds then, and now I'm still very curious now.
So we had a plan then that we talked ad nauseum, right? Multiple plans that we kind of went through. They're all just kind of projected, right? Because we don't know what's going to be available in stabilization funds necessarily, or free cash or anything else.
Correct.
I think what we're trying to say is that right now, it's a very valid question, Cinder. I have the same worries. Like, we talked about all that. We understood it at the time, but it's a year later, and
It'd be easy to
what's
forget
changed?
about it.
It doesn't necessarily, exactly. It doesn't necessarily change our requirement to just understand what's in the current debt service and do it, because that's all we're worried about the operating budget this year. Regardless of what we decide when we set tax rates, whether or not we can still afford to use those reserves or not. It'd be great if we had a forecast of that, and if you and or Sean have been thinking about that and have updated models, I think we'd love to see those, but.
Yeah, I can formalize what I have and share it with you. It is,
But if you look at this reserve fund page that Amy passed out, the stabilization fund balance goes from 2 million to 3.5 million, oh, well, that's not where it was. Let's see, 22, 23. Oh, there are no, well, there's at 22, June 30, 22, it was 6.7 million, now it's 7.7 million, so.
I think that million is, it looks like the formula might be off. Should be,
Oh, why it dropped in, well, no,
Yeah.
because 22 might
I
be
think
an
you're right.
actual number.
6.7 for fiscal '23. Looks like the formula's just off.
Looks like we appropriated it. We appropriated it last year. We appropriated $1 million of stabilization funds last year. Did we do that?
Correct.
We did.
Yes.
Okay, so, but now we're back up. Well, maybe we're not. We're not at June 30, 23. Do we have a balance in the stabilization fund right now, Amy?
Yeah. Are you talking general or capital?
General. And I guess my other question for you, Patrick, is while you're looking that up, is just to understand, is there a way to do something between now and 2030 or 2031 when this other middle school is proposed to be another debt exclusion? And we'll still have the debt from the elementary school, debt excluded, to prepare for the $1,530,000, so we're not quite so that it's more palatable for people to want to buy into it then? Maybe we could prepare with some of, I mean, I don't know if it's the capital stabilization fund, what's happening with that fund?
Did the police department roll off yet? Did that?
You can see it
That's,
right
you
here.
can see it right on here. So
That rolls off in 2028.
Yeah.
But I have a question, do we have a 5-year projection of operating revenues and expenses? Do you know how we're supposed to do that in November of each year?
Yes.
Did we do that?
We have it drafted, but it's not complete, right, Amy?
I mean, it would be helpful to understand what happens to these reserve positions in that projection, or if that projection's even balanced? Or do we have a structural imbalance in what you're putting together? I mean, I think that would help with the whole picture, and I think that town meeting should have the whole picture, frankly. Because we did say when we were accelerating the school debt that there were ways to manage it, and it'd be helpful to see, even if there's multiple ways to manage it, it'd be helpful to see that and how it ties in with down the road. It's only 5 years away that we'd be looking for another debt exclusion.
Yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Maybe updating some of the modeling that was done when we were originally contemplating how we were going to finance the school, marry that up with a 5 or 10-year forecast of operating and reserves, updated, and maybe factor in the assumptions about middle school debt that are sitting here before
Well, I
us.
mostly care about the future as opposed to the past at this point, but
Yeah.
if you want to do that, go crazy.
Yep.
I think that it'd be nice to see the next 5 years, right, to this middle school project when we look at the debt.
Okay.
Because it's an opportunity right now, maybe we don't appropriate as much stabilization funds as we could because we put it into capital stabilization, but not for other capital, for this middle school, that's gonna be the next, well, I don't know what the next big elephant is, if it's that, or if it's gonna be, developing the park.
But right now, there's no proposed warrant articles for appropriating or increasing or decreasing stabilization at this point?
No.
Okay. So generally, we're saying it'd be nice to have an update so that as we're, again, not really related to debt service in particular, but to know at town meeting, even though we're not really worrying about this till
Right.
tax rate setting time, where are we from a year, the last time we talked about this and talked
Sure.
to town meeting about what we thought we were going to be able to do? Has anything dramatically changed or,
What if there is no special town meeting in the fall?
yeah? I'll
Then there'd
take
be no
31 odds on
appropriation.
that.
No, but the more information we offer proactively,
Yeah.
the more smoothly the discussions go. And,
Definitely.
people
Right.
just need to understand, and planning ahead is part of what we're doing better now than what we used to do.
Yeah.
Would we include that in our letter, or would that be separate?
We
How would
might. I mean, or we might, maybe we should present on it a little bit if we're at the point, if Patrick has something that we feel it's solid to be presented, we might refresh their memory on what we did a year ago and just kind of reuse those slides at a high level at least, and then, talk about what changes and assumptions have happened since then, if any.
We did use some stabilization this past year, though, to lower the overall tax burden.
Yeah.
But part of it also was issuing the debt early, increased our interest expense last year.
Yep.
which we were able to offset with some interest income as well.
So I think we used
I
more
feel like
than
we're
we might have
doing
originally
what we
expected.
talked about.
Yeah.
Now it's just updating for more actual information.
Yeah.
Well, the elementary school, that didn't hit in fiscal '23. That's hitting next year for the first time.
I
Isn't it?
thought we paid a piece because we issued earlier than we anticipated,
We issued it, but
but in March, right?
March of 2022, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're not paying until March of 2020. Oh, we issue
I
in
think we
March of
paid-
2022?
Yep, we
Is that long ago? Okay, we did.
started paying this year.
So we used $1 million of stabilization funds already?
Yes.
Right, that's what
Yep.
that was used for, basically.
And that would not have
So,
been in that original model, so that's a change right there. That
yep,
Yeah, but the rate we locked in probably saved us, what, $8 million or something like that?
I'd say 20. If we issued 30-year debt today, we would definitely be at 4%. And the market's good today compared to, the last 5 months, 3 months, 4 months ago. It's come down. Silicon Valley Bank has helped lower rates than any market. What's the balance in the stabilization fund now?
It's currently $7,069,000, but that does not include the transfer of $1 million because
Oh.
it doesn't get posted till the money's actually moved.
But is that really the right, I thought we were saying there might be a formula based on this,
I think there is on that.
Yeah, it looks like it is.
because it would show 5,670,000 if the math, I think.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about the increase in the debt service?
Yes.
So it went up by, this
Not
percentage is
going down.
3.1%. And I know last year we did, so is part of that, what went up, the capital projects that we approved last year at town meetings?
Yes,
Or-
so I can tell you, the second line on the top of your sheet there, the 543,780. A large portion of that is associated with the land acquisition, which if you recall was $8,875,000.
Yeah, things are tight.
And that was issued in a short-term note, so a large portion of that makes up that number, as well as previously approved capital that was financed this month.
And so when we work with the Capital Improvements Committee to set the budget for capital, do we give them essentially how much would stay within the financial guidelines of 2% plus new growth?
Yes,
Like how-
yes.
So essentially what we're over here, is that mostly related to the land acquisition?
It's a combination of all the projects and the timing. So I wouldn't say it's just the land acquisition. Land acquisition is the largest project that was financed in the last year, but there are other projects that needed to be financed as well.
What was your original question, Eric? Are we asking the CIC to live within the 2 point?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm assuming we're asking the CIC to live within the 2% plus.
I wouldn't assume that, because it's they're talking about capital things that could cost millions of dollars that we're gonna spread over years, and they're not saying how much it's gonna cost in debt service, based on doing the math of how he's gonna finance it.
Yeah, that guidance is overall for the budget. Debt service is one piece, so it could go up more than that if we're not in a different area of the budget. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
So when we
Debt
advise,
exclusion is
when
really
we
different.
advise the capital improvement, Patrick goes through and projects the debt and figures out an estimate of how much debt we can have per policy and per guidelines based off the level of our general fund, and projects it that way to determine the cap on dollar-wise how much we can have for projects. So we start moving projects out further, meeting with department heads to move that, so that what's presented to CIC is all within the debt policy. But no, it's not necessarily debt and interest payments are limited to 2.6% of the budget.
I mean, when town meeting approves the capital improvements expenditures, they're essentially then affecting next year's budget if they're approving more.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so the trade-off is, do we do one project, and, you know, if we approve this project this year, we're gonna have to cut something else from the operating budget.
It pretty much affects 2 years because the town has the habit of issuing short-term notes where they don't even pay any principal for the first year. They typically would issue a note for a year and then bond it. And you don't really know when they authorize it, whether or not it's gonna go for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, or how it's gonna get structured. So you really don't know
Right.
how it's gonna pay
So I
off.
truly think that's what Amy's trying to say, is we have a different way to get a capital budget put together, and clearly they do a multi-year, and you can kind of see, that's why they push things out, and you can, but it's
Yeah.
not really just in any way backing into what the debt service might be as a percent of the budget.
Correct.
But then, I mean, you know, like in years like this where we have a really tight budget, you know, you look at this and you're like, oh, had we known, right, if we had pushed off, you know, X thousands of dollars of this project for 1 year, then we would have more flexibility in this operating budget.
Well, what they can do is just not, they can authorize it and just not issue it. Once it's authorized, it doesn't mean it's costing anything to put it on the books. So you authorize it, and you can figure out when you want to sell it. You can roll notes for 3 years without paying down any principal. You can roll them for 10 years if you're in a bad market environment. So I think that it's more complicated than just saying, we could authorize $100 million this year and not issue it for 10 years. I mean, so you can't, it's not going to just impact the following year.
Yeah, much to Cinder's point, there are a few tools in the treasurer's toolbox as to what type of debt to issue, when it's issued, and we don't issue until the projects are actually underway. So yeah, if everything just started tanking and we were in a really bad position, we could go and like pause those projects and have them not start yet to be able to not have to borrow that.
All right, I'm thinking maybe it's 5 minutes to 9, so maybe we can pause here. We're not done with, I don't think. I think we need to, sorry, Patrick, we probably need to digest and
Okay.
continue to talk, but
It's a big conversation.
if we just can talk real quickly, like schedule-wise, so we have a meeting on the calendar for Wednesday. That's virtual, not in person. Can everybody make that, or generally speaking?
I'm
No?
out of town.
Okay, we got a quorum at least, hopefully?
Yeah,
Generally,
yeah.
people can make it? I thought so, okay.
It may not be.
Okay. Sounds like we'll still have plenty to get a quorum, though, so.
Me too.
By a show of hands, do we have 5 people that are coming on Wednesday? Okay.
So we'll start with that service. We'll try to get through, what do I keep, not, enterprise
Enterprise
funds,
funds.
right? I mean, if people have other questions from the earlier part of the budget, we can certainly go back to them, things we kind of left as yellow, maybe. I don't think there was a lot.
There wasn't. I went back up through it, and I feel like most of the yellow were things that were genuinely pending, like the insurance that we're still shopping, and the Lynn Dispatch contract that is still being negotiated as well.
Okay. So, I mean, I hate to say this out loud, but I kind of feel like we're,
Don't say it.
I know, right? There's not a lot of complications so far. It's a, but there's not really, I don't think I asked this question before, like, what about, are there any complicated warrant articles? I don't remember you saying that there was much that was. are there
No,
anything-
so, the select board hasn't opened the warrant yet, but we did start piecing together, like, standard articles. So we are going to have bills of a prior fiscal year.
Yeah.
We are obviously going to have the budget. I believe we are aiming to have the water and sewer retained earnings on annual town meeting, because we're trying to get water and sewer rates set before they actually go into effect this year.
What a good idea.
I know. We're really on top of things. We'll obviously have the capital article. We are going to most likely have an article on the superintendent, the town administrator, myself, and the finance director for the school have been talking about coming up with a policy to establish a special education reserve fund, which would be adopted under Chapter 40, Section 13E. So we've been working on a policy. I circulated a draft for that today that myself and Cheryl worked on earlier. So that there would be 2 articles for that, one to adopt the reserve fund under that statute, and then the second one to transfer money from free cash into it. and we will have the last needed article on that transportation infrastructure network fund, the Uber and Lyft monies that we get every year.
Yeah.
But they did pass legislation that if you receive those monies less than a really high threshold that we don't hit, you no longer need to appropriate
Got it.
those monies. So this will be the last time that will be on the warrant. But yes, as of right now, I would say that reserve fund is the only new thing that isn't a standard town meeting article.
Is there a capital bond authorization article?
Yep, so we'll have the regular Chapter 90 appropriation and then the regular capital article are both anticipated.
It's something besides chapter 90, anything besides chapter 90?
Like the
Chapter 90,
regular
is that
capital?
state aid? What?
The-
Like, is there any bonding?
No, we just approve the capital article, right?
As part of
Yeah.
the capital plan, but nothing outside of that.
Oh, how much is the capital that's being requested?
CIC hasn't
Oh.
done that yet.
So,
They still haven't done it? I thought, wait a minute, I thought you guys shared out a OneDrive and that's all.
Yes, they haven't.
They haven't voted.
They
Voted
haven't
it.
voted, okay.
Yeah.
Amy, can you
They will,
remind us
shortly.
the date?
Yeah, what, and so the last time they voted was in
Yeah,
the
it's May
fall? I
15th.
mean, Matt,
It's always the third Monday in May.
is that right?
Okay. And
They haven't
probably
met since the fall?
No.
like
Why not?
it's supposed to be
You're the liaison, come on.
Yeah.
Crack the whip.
I just keep asking, did you forget to invite me? No, we haven't.
Eric, can we get copies of the warrant articles sooner than later, even if they're blank? Just because it's hard to commit to memory, everything that was she just said?
Let's ask her, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're not even considered yet or drafted yet, but yeah.
No, but instead of getting them in the 11th hour.
Oh, no, I know what you mean, yeah. So, go ahead.
Oh, one of the select board meetings, I heard there was something about like a Pine Street acquisition.
That would be
That
done, that would be done through the use of ARPA funds.
So it's not part of our budget.
So we don't have to vote on it, the state is gonna pay for it.
It's,
So it
Well,
will
the
come up
state
at town
gave
meeting?
the town money, and the town can just spend it.
Do you think, is the town administration going to speak to what it's doing with all the ARPA funds?
That's it.
I believe so.
That would be nice. I mean, even if we don't have to vote on it, it'd be nice to know what's being done with it.
Yeah, so the select board is voting on all of the appropriations from it. So that's just been on pause right now.
So it was
When
like
is
four,
that
it was
happening?
like $4
Doing
million.
that before town meeting?
I don't believe they're gonna, I don't know if they're gonna do the Pine Street before town meeting, but
We got like $4 million in ARPA funds.
we
Right.
got
It'd be nice to know how $4 million
4.56.
is being spent around town.
They haven't.
They haven't really spent any yet,
allocated
right,
it.
except for the
No.
bonuses?
No, so the
They
only,
haven't been spending it.
Yeah.
yeah, the
Small
monies that have
amount.
been spent from ARPA, there was
Small.
an extremely small amount, and by that I mean less than $100, that was used for the call system for
Yeah, but
contact
besides
tracing.
that, there was
And
like
then it
a
was,
chunk.
yeah, there was,
Like,
I want to say $20,000 for one sewer project that we had to do, and the bulk of it was the one-time compensation that was part of collective bargaining and all of that.
Do they have till the end of '24? Is that the deal, to spend the ARPA
We have
money?
until December 30th, 2024 to expend all the money. I did speak with our auditors. There's a tiny bit of leeway that if we appropriate it for a project and we were about 90% complete as of that date, we'd still be in compliance, but
But you actually have to have spent it? So
you have to
some of
have
these
spent the
projects would
majority
take-
of it by then, yes.
So is there a running list of what's being considered?
We have a list of what department heads have put forward as requests, but there has not been the overall discussion with the board on evaluating those requests yet.
Okay, let's move on to just wrap up here. So, I just want to get you guys' thoughts about, obviously CIC is still kind of an open thing because they haven't met, so we can't really meet with them. Is it worthwhile for us to talk to Patrick or you and so we can just walk through the proposed articles even without CIC? Would
Yeah.
that be a good use of our time? The other question, I think I put this in an email, it's like, so this year, we didn't talk to any department heads really, aside from the school. So, in the past, we've typically had maybe police and fire, or sometimes Gino. So I just want to put that to the group. Do we feel that, we should talk to the two chiefs and ask them about if things they're trying to do to mitigate overtime costs? There's a lot of new, with the changes in the CBA and the minimum manning and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's good.
All right, so maybe I can try to see if we can get them to both just join maybe next Monday's, virtual meeting, and they can just pop on and,
I like
say
the
that-
idea of Gino too. I think he's pretty, he's got a big command, big responsibility for all sorts of stuff.
Next Monday, the 3rd. If it's possible to avoid big important people on Wednesday, the 5th, that would be helpful. It's the first night of Passover.
Okay. Yeah, Wednesday seems to be tougher for people in general, that's why I was saying Monday for that.
Yeah, Monday is much better.
Okay. So then, I'll see if I can pull it together for the 3rd. This week, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, we'll meet again and kind of go through the enterprise funds and more debt service and anything else we can come up with there. The following, we need to save time somewhere in there for CIC, so once they're done. Well, maybe that's the week of the 10th. Because then we'll have another week until the letter is due on the 17th if we stick to that schedule, so.
Like, we should probably meet with them whether they're done or not. They can just tell us where
That's
they're
true.
at. Because, like, otherwise it just gets later and later and we
That's
don't
true.
have what we need.
That's true.
You might
So,
want to do the letter for the 18th, because the 17th really is a holiday.
no, I agree, yeah, I agree, it's just whatever, it's the next day, we'll send it once Amy comes into the office on Tuesday morning. But, that's gonna be hard for us to meet, I think, that letter date.
If you want to reach out to CIC, Ryan Hale is the new chair.
Was he? Okay.
Oh,
So,
Ryan Hale.
Ryan Hale, yeah,
That name sounds familiar.
he's a member.
He's been a
He's been
member.
on CIC for a long time.
I believe he presented the capital article at last special as well.
So maybe, just to keep with that, so I'll try to get police, fire, and Gino for the 3rd, which is a week from today. We'll try to get CIC for the 10th. Guys, are you listening?
oh, so it's opposite.
It's a different,
Yeah.
so we're gone from the 4th to the 11th, but the following week, everybody else is gone.
We have one at Town Hall if you're on.
I know Glenn has one, it's an.
Wednesday is Teams, Monday is also Teams.
Right now, everything's Teams.
Right now, everything's virtual except for
Yeah.
today.
So we'll do next, so this week we just talked about what we're gonna do Wednesday. Next, on the 3rd, if I can get fire, police, and Gino,
Do you want us to coordinate that, or do you want to reach out to them?
I'll reach out to him.
Okay.
Thank you. And we'll do CIC on the 10th. I'll reach out to Ryan. We have the 5th. I know that's a Passover day, but it's kind of out there in case we can get a quorum of this thing still to be talked about. Just kind of see where we are, if we're in crisis mode or not. I don't think we will be, but, does anybody have any, thoughts of volunteering to do letter work? I mean, I'm happy to be involved with that myself, but I don't necessarily want to write it myself, so just put that on the table if people feel they're good wordsmiths or want to at least contribute.
Maybe we could come up with some ideas for you.
That'd be
Yeah,
a draft, yeah,
bullets, a couple
exactly.
bullets.
I'm happy
Big
to
copies.
write, but would love bullets.
Okay, that's great. So let's maybe next, on Wednesday, Wednesday or Monday, wherever we are, if we start thinking about bullets, we can start
Bullets.
drafting. Awesome.
Bullets.
Just because I can't remember if you were chair for our last town meeting, we have a prep meeting before town meeting with town council, the moderator, town clerk and stuff, so the chair of finance committee.
When is that?
is always
Not
a
knowing.
rando
Okay,
date that will be circulated.
okay.
Mike McClung normally coordinates it. I just wanted to give you a heads up because I know you actually have a job and a life, but
Did you not do that last year?
No, I wasn't chair last year. It was still
yeah.
Tim.
Special town meeting.
Oh.
Special I was, yeah. I went to some
Dorsey.
meeting, I sat in the back row, and the select board was there. Maybe that was the equivalent of that.
Mm-mm.
Something different, okay. All right, anything else?
Just a reminder, annual town meeting is Monday, May 15th.
Thank you.
Hopefully, just that night.
Just that night?
Hopefully just a one-night event.
Wow.
I always hope that it's just a one-night event. It is booked for multiple nights, just in case.
All right, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. We can just do it this way. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.